Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I am joined here, as always, by the man who has as big of hands as at least one of the guys in this draft class. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've never actually measured my hand. I don't even know if that's true, but it's possible.
We can just say it. I mean, no one knows. Maybe you have giant hands.
Yeah, I'm not doing the combine. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you've. I mean, I guess you do the point at the end, so maybe people can try to figure it out that way. But who knows?
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, I mean, how tall are we? You could be 5'8", you could be 6'7". This is it's all. I mean, especially the podcast only listeners. They don't know anything about us.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm 6'5", just so people believe it.
Okay, yeah. So you're only a couple inches shorter than me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Kyle, it's draft season. We have actual stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it's the NFL's a 24/7 sport, man. 365. This is going to be a fun draft. I think it's an interesting draft. I think that there's a lot of random depth. I think there's a lot of talk, especially that in the quarterbacks, that it's not very strong. And I think that the number one key to this is perspective. We're about to go through our top 10 guys. I have one quarterback with the first round grade.
Okay.
But I know that probably two or three of these guys are going to go in the first round. So it's going to be interesting to talk about. It's going to be interesting to see who's going for these guys and who's talked themselves into who.
Yeah, it's always fun. I mean, the quarterbacks are, it's why we devote a whole show just to the quarterbacks, just so you guys know how this is going to work throughout the rest of the way. We're going to do the quarterbacks today. I'm going to give my top 10 list. We're going to go through my list, and then Kyle will let us know where he ranked those players in his own personal list. And if there's anyone I left off, he'll talk about them at the end. So we're going to devote the whole show today to quarterbacks. A week from today, defensive players. I've almost finished scouting defensive players. That's a lot of fun stuff there. And then a week following that, we'll do the offensive players outside of quarterbacks, of course, wrap it up that way. And then a week after that, we'll do our annual mock draft. So it's interesting. I have three players who I have a first round grade on. So I may be a little bit higher in this quarterback class than you. And a couple players that I actually have another four with a second round grade. So, actually, that's not true. A day two grade. Which, that could be second or third. But still, there's players I like in this draft. I agree, though. There's no Zach Wilson. There's no Trevor Lawrence. There's no denying that.
Yeah, so I had one with the first round grade. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more with day two grades, basically. And then
Gotcha.
I have a few other day three honorable mention kind of spots there. But yeah, so I think it's weirdly like there's guys I think you can talk yourself into. And if you're looking for a particular skill set, I think the interesting thing about this draft class is just the skill sets I think are the most interesting. There's a lot of mobility in this class. And I think that's something that people are going to talk themselves into, especially with the, just the modernization of quarterback. All of these guys can run. I feel like all of these guys can really move pretty well. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how that's prioritized in this draft.
Yeah, this is a good question, Kyle. Would Davis Mills be the number one quarterback in this draft had he stayed at Stanford? Kyle, how would you feel about Davis Mills, quarterback one?
I disagree. But I think he would have been. I think he would have been in the upper half again. Definitely. I think he's. I think he was a pretty big prospect at a high school. I think if he got a full healthy season at Stanford, I think it would have done wonders for his stock.
What about this? If Davis Mills enters the draft now, where would he end up on your list?
Probably fifth. Maybe fourth. No, probably fifth.
Yeah, probably around there for me as well. I still don't know if we may not be part of the Mills Mafia.
Yeah, not quite. But
you know what I want to do? Instead of talking about the quarterbacks, let's just talk about Davis Mills for an hour.
What a neck! What a neck on that guy.
Yeah, great neck. No, want to just get into the list?
Yeah, go for it.
All right,
start off your list. Number 10.
Yeah, number 10. So I should, there's tiers here. I should specify there's only really 9 guys I'm really that interested in. So the 10th guy is there's a few guys who I'm not even sure if I would draft him. I think you can make the argument that, like, even if I had a 7th round pick, I wouldn't take this guy. But he's someone who I'm at least somewhat interested in. I'm going Caleb Alby here. he's an interesting prospect. He's not the biggest guy at 6'1", 209 pounds, but he's relatively athletic, solid arm strength, and he was able to run an offense as well. My issues with him were sort of not the best pocket presence, a lot of air under his throws, lacks accuracy, and isn't really great at anything. He's definitely sort of a low ceiling guy, but it's not a top 9 list, it's a top 10 list. I know not exactly raving reviews for the Western Michigan quarterback Caleb Alby, but that's why I have him here.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys at the bottom of this class that are like kind of the same build. Like they're not big. Like if you look at like him, like you could look at Dustin Crum, you could look at the kid from Eastern Washington, and it's all like kind of short guys that move a little bit and don't really throw far. I feel like he fits in that mold too.
Yeah. One guy you can't say that about is Cole Kelly. He's a very different build, but that's, he did not make this list. He's like a 6'7", just mammoth guy who's an interesting prospect. Maybe we can talk about him at the end. But yeah, for Alby, I don't know how much we want to spend on him because, again, I'm not crazy about him as a prospect, but he's someone who, like, I don't know, I could see spending a 6th or 7th round pick to get him to try to be a backup potential.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to be talked. I think there's a lot of guys in the end of this draft they're going to try and talk themselves into as either a backup or or potentially an undrafted guy. They're going to talk themselves into as a backup or practice squad guy, just because I think there's a lot of these guys, especially with these spread offenses, that are pretty accurate quarterbacks nowadays. I think that they have some mechanical stuff they need to work out, and I think he fits that mold.
Yeah. Let's just move on because I think it really gets interesting starting at 9. So number 9, next tier up, there's 2 players, 8 and 9 are in the same tier. These are the guys who I'm not crazy about. They have serious flaws, but I would totally talk myself into them if my team drafted them. All right, it's that tier. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so number 9, this is going to be a low one. I know people have him higher. Give me Carson Strong here at number 9. I am not a part of the Strong Mafia either. That sounds like a fun Strong Mafia. It sounds like it's a very good mafia. Carson Strong is someone who has been getting a lot of buzz as of late. Some people are talking about him as I've seen some people even have him as their favorite quarterback in this draft class. I don't have that as the case for me. There's some serious injury concerns of him. That's the big thing that gets talked about. But even you take that out of the equation, I didn't really see him as much more than like a day 2 pick anyways, even without the injury concerns at best. I thought he had really inconsistent zip. I keep hearing about his arm talent, but I didn't really see it. I thought he had inconsistent accuracy. I thought he put too much air on his deep throws. He can throw the ball far, but there was just too much air under it when he did, and it was just kind of some inconsistencies with that. There's some good stuff. He can throw on the run. He can't run the ball, but he can throw on the run and throw off balance. Now, he's a pocket passer through and through, Carson Strong is, but, can move off balance. He can definitely throw it a long way. He does read defenses. And solid pocket presence as well. And it's also fair to say it's possible some of those negatives are due to the injuries he's had. That's kind of been a factor. So that's where he's an interesting prospect. And like I said, I would talk myself into him if Tampa Bay drafted him, or, I'm sure if anyone watching would talk themselves into it if their favorite team drafted him. There's stuff to like about him, but I think the negatives outweigh the positives.
Yeah, and I had him 7th. I actually had him. I said there was about 6 here that I had in the day 2. He's kind of fringe day 2, day 3 for me. He's at the bottom of that list. And I don't know. He kind of just reminds me of some of the guys that we've talked ourselves into in the past. I mean, at one point during the regular or college football season, people were tabbing him as a 1st-round candidate. And I think that he could throw the ball a million miles. He can throw it very far, obviously. But, Kyle Buller could throw it far. And I think that's something that's kind of overlooked and overstated sometimes. I think the arm's interesting, and I think that's why someone's going to talk themselves into it. But, I talked about before the show about a lot of the things these guys do well. He's probably the least athletic quarterback of this class.
Like ever. Yes. How far he would be the least athletic quarterback in the NFL. I think Tom Brady would be a better athlete than Carson Strong.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that there's things he's going to struggle with. I think that moving up to this level with the speed of the game is going to be tough for him. And yeah, I mean, I just don't think he has the accuracy to match that arm to really make it worthwhile.
Yeah. And again, if you're good at the other stuff, I don't really care about you not being a great athlete, right? Like, what are you good at? If there's plenty of guys who I like, but like Mac Jones Mac Jones wasn't a bad athlete. Mac Jones was someone who didn't run much, but I think he ran like a 4.7. Like he was a fine athlete. He just kind of almost by design didn't. We see some chats, or some people in the chat saying, like, Nicholas Gill saying, wow, I think Strong is the top pocket passer in this draft with the strongest arm. I've heard people say that. Like, again, there's people that like Strong. So maybe if you believe, if you buy into that, then cool. For someone like him, with the injury concerns he would have, I'd already be a little bit concerned about that. But I just didn't love his tape. I didn't think that he had this amazing stuff. I thought that, I also, one thing in my notes I didn't say, but like, I thought he took some too many sacks in college and also made some really questionable post snap reads. And again, just because you can throw it a long way, if it's having to go over the mountains to get there, it's not as effective at the NFL level. You want to get there in a hurry. To me, that's where arm strength matters more, which he wasn't as good at sometimes, but just inconsistent.
Yeah, and the thing is I think if you're not a great athlete at quarterback, it's fine. But at the same time, I think you have to have a really good pocket presence, and I think he's solid in the pocket. But I don't think, like, if I look at some of the other pocket passers we've seen in the past, I mean, if you go to, I guess we'll pull up the Mac Jones. Mac Jones doesn't have the arm that Carson Strong has, but I thought Mac Jones was an elite pocket present prospect.
Yeah,
I don't view Carson Strong as elite at that. And I don't view him elite as an accuracy touch as I viewed Mac Jones at. And I just think he's lacking some of those things to really excel without the ability to move at the NFL level.
Yeah. But hey, if you're a quarterback needy team and he's there in like the 4th or 5th round, I say go for it.
Someone is going to talk themselves into doing it in the 2nd and 3rd round.
Yeah, you're right.
Someone's going to see him throw the ball 80 yards and say, okay, that's our quarterback. It's going to happen, but I do have him a little lower too. But yeah, I do see the interest in him, but at the same time, I just think that there's too many things that he's got to overcome, and I don't see him being able to do it.
John Gruden's got to be so upset he can't draft Carson Strong. This is just a guy who doesn't move, just the prototypical pocket passer. Oh, that's the perfect Gruden grinder. Carson Strong is.
Las Vegas backup.
Yeah, and then they'll start is he going to be the starter conversations that always seems to happen no matter who's the backup there for whatever reason. But let's move on. Let's go to number 8 here. Kyle, I don't care. I like this guy. All right. I'm going to go with the Eric King here at number 8. And you know what? One of my positives is he doesn't have to be quarterback. So that's kind of where we're at with the Eric King, and also kind of said something about this draft class. Literally my notes that I put up for this podcast, I literally just wrote Taysom Hill underneath it. Cause like, that's what it is. He's the Taysom Hill-esque quarterback type guy. He's very different stylistically as a runner than Taysom Hill. But in terms of like, you bring him in these short yardage situations as a threat to run. That's what the value is for someone like him. I'm always interested in getting these guys in the building, and with a kind of a flyer pick, that's what I like about him. He's electric to watch. Great college player. He's 24. He's, been in college for seemingly 30 years at this point, but he's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, he's fun. I liked him in college. I liked watching him in college, but I just know that this skill set's not going to translate to the NFL. I didn't have him on my board. Sure. I just look, if you're going to say, okay, let's bring Derek King in and potentially move him to a slot receiver kind of thing or Wildcat style quarterback, then absolutely, I say bring Derek King into your team because he's fun, he's athletic, he does all these things really well. But I mean, what is his size? I think it's 5'9".
Yeah, his listed size might be different than his actual size. I have it listed at 5'11", 194, but that feels like it's a bit inflated.
Yeah. And the NFL.com prospect had him at 5. Like, when have we ever seen a quarterback like without a ridiculous arm be like amazing at that size? Probably never. He's not going to be able to sit in a pocket and throw. He's not going to be able to throw over the middle at the NFL level. I just think that obviously there's some. If you look at all the things he can't do, you're going to talk yourself out of Derek King pretty quickly. If you look at the things he can do, which is move, be a gadget type player, you're going to talk yourself into Derek King as kind of being this interesting player that you can have in your playbook. So I agree with that. As a quarterback, I don't have him in my top 10.
Sure, that's understandable. I guess my thing with King is, again, I have him as number 8 because he's listed as a quarterback, but like I probably would use him as a quarterback. My thing is, if it's, again, 4th or 5th round kind of spot, this is kind of where I like to work. I think in the defensive podcast especially, we're going to talk a lot about guys who are very toolsy and have all the physical skills, but maybe don't have the production to back it up. to me, I like taking flyers on those guys sort of on day 3, right? I don't want to take those guys day 1. And that's why, like, if I think it would be insane to draft him with like a 2nd round pick or anything like that. But the idea is you get him with a good coach that knows how to use unique players, and he could be a positive benefit to your team more so than I feel like any of the other quarterbacks on this list.
I do think he's going to find himself into I think, decent NFL career. I don't know how long it's going to last because he's so small, but I do think he's going to find himself with a decent NFL couple of seasons.
He'll probably he'll have one game where he has like a bunch, like a really cool highlight.
Yeah, he might have one game where he has like 110 all-purpose yards,
right?
And like 2 touchdowns, and you're like, oh, Derek King.
Yeah,
but I just think that quarterback, obviously, I don't see it happening for him, but I do think he's going to stick it in the league for a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's move on. Number 7 here. So I have another tier jump here. And kind of, it might be, but these are the guys who I think have backup potential. There's 2 guys here that I'm like, these could be good quality backups. And the first of which I have Chase Garber's here at number 7 here. 22 years old, 6'2", 225 pounds. And, he's a good athlete, definitely uses his legs, which is kind of what, some of these guys have to do when you don't have like the strongest of arms, but he can throw off balance. I think he has a good throwing motion and makes good decisions. He can run an offense. He just, lacks zip on the football for sure. Can't read a blitz, which is going to be a trend with a lot of these guys, and holds on to the ball for too long, kind of what I mentioned. But there's stuff to like about him. I think you could argue he has like some Gardner Minshew upside. I'm not sure if he'll get there, but that's kind of he's the first guy who I'm like, he feels like an NFL quarterback on this list.
Yeah. He just holds onto the ball forever. Like,
sure.
That's literally his worst. I think his worst quality is that he doesn't feel pressure at all, and he gets himself killed. And I think he even got a shoulder injury basically off of that situation. He feels like a guy who can fit into a lot of NFL offenses and be fine. And so I think a team is going to take him as a 2nd or 3rd stringer, and he could stick around for a long time doing that. But yeah, he feels fine. I guess that seems like the right appropriate answer for Chase Garber's. I think he can do a lot of things well. I just think that with his inability to feel pressure and kind of, have those intangibles, I just don't see him sticking in the league or even developing as a starter.
Gotcha. I think one thing that I like about him is that because he can move and because he is an athlete, it seems like for these later round draft picks, that's kind of a necessity just to survive in the NFL is if you do get that shot, because it is an if with someone like him, it's possible he gets 0 snaps. That's a very real thing. But if he does get a legitimate shot at the NFL at some point, he'll probably have to move because that's kind of what you need to do as a rookie to succeed early on. It seems to be the guys who can move, but it also seems to be the guys who get rid of the ball quickly, which, as you mentioned, isn't exactly what he's known for.
Yeah. Chase Garber's feels like a guy who's destined to go to Detroit and get sacked like 5 times in a game and then like miss the rest of the season.
Yeah. Well, does he need to go to Detroit, though, because they have great backup Tim Boyle?
Yeah, you might want to upgrade that spot, honestly. So maybe Garber's is their guy.
Yeah, can't get worse. Any of these guys are better than Tim Boyle.
Yeah, that's a given. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, he, I do think there's things to like about him. Like you said, I think he works good out of pocket. I think he's good at making off balance throws. I think he is good off of schedule. Basically, is what I guess is what it's called. And yeah, I think he does all that pretty well. He's just not a guy who's going to be able to stand in the pocket and make those kind of reads.
Yeah, I agree. You want to move on to number 6? We're kind of plowing around here, but I think the top 5 we'll spend more time on.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. Yeah, number 6, still no hot takes here, Kyle. I know everyone's waiting for the hot takes. I guess Carson Strong was a little bit warm, maybe. Dylan Bailey, is it Zapp or Zappy? I think it's Zappy, right?
I think it's Zappy, yeah.
Okay, the first thing is like, why?
Why what?
Why is his name Zappy?
I don't know.
Is this a French pronunciation? What's the deal? It's spelled Zappe. So that should be Zap, right? Shouldn't Zappy be like Zapie?
Well, I don't know. I don't know family heritage here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't do that much background research.
Okay, like see Bailey, that makes sense to have it sound like that. Bailey. Why isn't there a Y at the end of Zappy? Wouldn't that make it work?
You're gonna have to take it up with him, man. Maybe he can come on the podcast and explain his family heritage.
Okay, well he's a bit undraftable because of that. No, I like Zappy. I think that there's some good stuff with him. I see him as I legitimately think that he's someone who's could be a good backup quarterback in the NFL. The ceiling is definitely a concern, but he has a good throwing motion, good footwork. He can run an offense. He can throw off balance. He's inaccurate. Doesn't have the biggest arm, and that's kind of where his limiting factor, I think, is going to be. And I've also had that he's not a very athletic quarterback, but he picks his moments pretty well from what I've seen. So kind of like what you're talking about, if you're not going to be a great athlete, at least be able to, understand that and know that that's who you are as a player. And definitely, I have one of my biggest concerns about him is he has this weird thing where he feels like he can make any throw. So like as an athlete, he totally gets that. He thinks that okay, certain moves I can't make. But then as a thrower, he's like, I am a god of throwing the football. I'm just going to do whatever I can make any throw. And it's like you're like a fringe NFL arm talent. Why are you acting like you're Patrick Mahomes out here? So that's my biggest concern about him.
Yeah. I actually had him at 5. I moved him up. I have him one above you. I moved one of those guys down. When I watch him, I think of another college quarterback who put up big numbers. I think of Case Keenum. I think this guy could have a Case Keenum-like career. I think he can make all the throws outside the numbers. Once again, he's not the biggest guy, so I think over the middle throws he's going to struggle with. Like you said, he's not the biggest arm, so I think even when he forces it, it's going to be tough to make tight window throws. But I think he can come in and run an NFL offense just fine. I think his arm's good enough, and I think his mobility is good enough. I think he can go in and do just fine, and I think he can have a Case Keenum-like career. I have him at number 5, and I think look, I think backup quarterback's an important position. So it's like if you get Bailey Zappi in the 4th round and he turns into Case Keenum, I think you're just fine with that.
Yeah, and listen, his arm isn't Jake Fromm, right? Like it's not like he's like someone who like he looks like he's Jake Fromm. You see him and you're like, is he left-handed? Why is he throwing the ball with his right hand then? Because it's going so like he can throw the football. Like I think he can again. If someone's gonna be like the Dak Prescott of this year and like be a later round pick who turns into like a tier 2 quality quarterback, I'd probably bet it on Zappy.
There's a couple guys I have, but yeah, I mean, I do think it's interesting to watch him. I just think I just think that he's proven time and again that he can just make these throws and be smart with the football. Like you said, I think he forces some throws, but at the same time, I don't think it's like an egregious mistakes that he makes time and time again. So I just think that he can just go in and run an NFL offense pretty smoothly.
Yeah, Kyle, I have to say though, now kind of I feel like the headliner now is I'm very fascinated to figure out who you have out of the typical top 5, not as number 5. There's like the top 5 that typically gets picked. You have one of them at 6, at least at 6. So I'm very fascinated. I feel like now the biggest plot line is that.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Obviously,
Yeah, sure.
So I put Zappy as a 3rd round grade, and I put the guy at 6 who was his typically in the top 5. I also have it at a 3rd round grade, but I think you're kind of splitting hairs with these two, but I'm also not as high as some of these other people are with putting. I've seen him in the 1st and 2nd round, and I just don't think he's up there.
Gotcha. And it's more fun to do it that way too.
Yeah.
I mean,
we need some spicy takes in here.
Sure. Every time I'm like, if it's like a coin flip for me, but one's more fun, I just do the fun one. That's my behind the scenes thing. But yeah, I guess. So what's the upside for like what's the best case scenario for Zappy? Is it just like I almost feel like it's like going to like Pittsburgh, right? And like would that be something where he can like hand the ball off to Najee Harris 1,000 times, or maybe not? I don't know. What's the best case scenario for him?
Best case scenario. Let's see. Well, it's going to be going in. I think it's just an established organization where he can kind of learn. I think like let's throw New Orleans out there. New Orleans gets their guys back. Let's say Jameis Winston struggles or something happens, something like that, and then he can kind of come in and just kind of run that offense. Alvin Kamara's on the field. We'll see if that actually happens. Michael Thomas is on the field. We'll see if that actually happens. And then he can just kind of have like, hey, I have 2-star players at my disposal. I have a foundation with this team, and I think I can go in and run that offense.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into it. Top 5, what we're all here to see. We had to do the bottom 5, and that was fun. But here's where things are really going to get interesting. 5, and quite frankly, Kyle, I've seen these 5 in every single configuration, and in the mock drafts or right, it seems like there's no consensus on these guys.
Yeah, I think that everyone I think every one of these guys could be a good quarterback in the NFL. I have questions about how many of them can actually be great in the league, but I do think that all of them can be pretty solid if they develop the right way. So I think that's something that everyone's going to talk themselves into, just depending on the skill set they like the most.
Yeah. So just so people know where I'm at, so this is another tier jump. The next 2 guys I have as relatively high second round picks, and quite frankly, some of these guys are going to go in the second round, and I think I would like that pick for any of them, in my opinion. I think that like taking a flyer on a quarterback, if you're a quarterback needy team, is always a good idea. Get as many good quarterbacks with potential in the building. Let's start off with number 5. Give me Sam Howell. Sam Howell, the guy, out of North Carolina. I think that he's a very fascinating prospect. I don't know. He's definitely the guy I'm the lowest on out of these 5. My issues with him, I guess we'll start off with that because he's the lowest out of the 5. Some deep ball inaccuracy I saw. He would hit on some, but he would miss on some. I guess one of the things that I really just kind of a broader thing. It's not in my notes, but like it just feels like a lot of what he does that works, that should work, just or like that. Excuse me. A lot of the stuff that he does that works in college, it just feels like it should never work even in college, and I can't imagine it working in the NFL. Like his running ability, it's just like okay, you should not be able to look like Tim Tebow out there. I don't know why this is, where you're like running over guys. Like I don't fully get this, and it certainly doesn't seem that sustainable. That's a concerning aspect for me. He does take a lot of sacks. He doesn't have I didn't love his pocket presence. He's one of all these guys can't pick up a blitz. None of them can pick up a blitz, but he's one of those guys that can't pick up a blitz. And he definitely tries to get away from everyone when I feel like he should just give up on the play. But there's stuff I like about him. Like I said, the production is there. And if you're someone who believes in quarterback production, which I care about production in other positions more than quarterback doesn't seem to matter, whereas other positions it does. So I care about it in other positions going to the draft, not quarterback. But he is someone who did produce, and maybe he'll continue to produce at the NFL level. Like, again, a good runner for sure. I thought he was good in the shallow to over the middle throws, and at times definitely did a good job at running an offense. I also felt like at times he looked worse due to other receivers not being able to get open. Can get the ball in a hurry, and again, kind of a wonky throwing motion. But that's my scouting report on Sam Howell. Kyle, where did you have him?
I had him number 4. I have him fringe second, maybe third round. I think this is the one guy that we look at, and if he's taken in in that fringe second or third round, I think he's the one guy in this draft who can make us look stupid because dog's barking. Anyway, so he big time prospect out of high school, came on guns blazing freshman season, looked really good, and then last year it wasn't as good. What happened between the 2 years? He lost literally everybody on his team.
Right.
De'Ami Brown left. They had 2 running backs taken last year in the draft that both left. I think he lost a lot of his offensive line too. And I think he already kind of has a hero complex when he plays quarterback, which can be a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. But he really needed to have a hero complex last season because that team was not very good offensively, I thought, last year. I thought he was trying to bail them out of a lot of situations. I think he made some bad throws. I think if he gets into the right situation where he can, kind of focus on building his mechanics, working better. I think he's great at off-platform throws. I think he's great at working off script, but I think he needs to work on his on-script game a lot. And I think that when he has better talent around him, he could look really good potentially. I have him at number 4 as potentially a second-round pick, and I think that someone's going to talk themselves into that high upside play.
Doesn't Sam Howell just feel like if you somehow combined Baker Mayfield and Mitchell Trubisky?
Kind of.
I feel like that's Sam Howell.
I actually was thinking he's kind of Colt McCoy-esque.
Oh, well, then he should be good number 1 then.
Yeah, exactly. He probably even has a better arm than Colt McCoy. I think
Impossible.
I do think there's going to be some things that he's going to do pretty well, and I think he loves to throw the ball deep. He's not going to be afraid to throw it downfield. And I think some teams are going to go and look to see if they can harness this talent, which I think there is a ton of talent here. It's just, sometimes he's got to get himself out of his own head.
Yeah, well, and again, that's where things get weird. One thing I like about him is that he's only 21, right? So he's a young guy, and maybe I feel like if you played less or if you're younger, I kind of feel like there's hope that you could sort of unlearn some of your bad decision-making stuff and get better. Whereas like the more you played, the more I'm like, okay, you probably are who you are. So I think that that's another aspect that's in his pro column. So I'm higher on Howell than you, even though you actually have him a spot higher in your quarterback rankings, because I have him as I believe I had him as kind of like around like a 40 to 50 range pick. So, a mid to high second round pick, and you have him more of a low second round pick.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, I definitely had this class rated even lower than you do.
Hmm.
But I do know that some of these guys, a lot of these guys, even though, like I said, I have one in the first round, I know a few more of these guys are also going to go in the first round. It's just kind of how it works. And Howell's, I think, a guy who's going to go early second round, even if I have him graded a little bit lower, just because quarterback is an important position. Positional value matters. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate the pick though. If someone takes him in the early second round, just because if you're prioritizing quarterback position at that stage, I think he's a guy that makes a lot of sense for that spot. I think he has confidence for days. And I think that under the right circumstances, he's going to be potentially a really good starter in this league.
Yeah, I think again, if we're gonna play the game of what's the best spot for him, I know I just picked Pittsburgh with another guy, but I think Pittsburgh really is the best spot for him. Of like, just let him throw the ball up to like Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson, and then like he can use his running ability there because like they don't have the best offensive line, but maybe he can get away with it. But also, I have to mention like again, I saw this running ability. It worked in college, but like it didn't look great a lot of times. I feel like it was kind of like a bit Lamar Jackson-esque, where you know how Lamar Jackson like seemingly runs directly into someone else, but then does a juke move and gets out of it. Well, like Sam Howell did that, but he did it in college, and I worry that it might not work because he's not that great of an athlete. Or I mean, he's a good athlete, but he's not Lamar Jackson good,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it'll work at the college level or
Well,
at
the
the
thing
NFL level.
is like if we're talking about these five guys, he might be the slowest of these five guys. He seems like he's weirdly elusive though. Like it
Yeah.
just seems like things kind of work out for him. I don't know.
Hmm.
Like he kind of just screams gamer to me, and I kind of like that about him. Maybe I'm talking myself into it a little bit too much, but
Hmm.
I think that there's just things about him that you're really gonna like, and I think that if you can, it's one of those guys where it's like, okay, if I can work the bad habits out of him, I think he's going to be really good. And if the bad habits take over, he's going to find himself out of the league pretty quickly.
He's someone you can talk yourself into.
Yes.
Exactly. So let's move on. Another guy who I think, again, I have him as a high second rounder. So we're not quite into the first rounders yet. Give me Desmond Ritter here. I kind of, my watching his film, I went through much of a roller coaster because there is stuff I really like about Ritter, but there's some issues. I mean, for one thing, if you care about measurements and stuff, so he's 6'4", 216 pounds, so he's a bit skinny. He's also 22, so like I said, a young guy. That's nice to see. He definitely will miss some throws. He does have some accuracy issues, and part of that is footwork. And quite frankly, I saw a bit of a Drew Lock type of stuff. I'd actually compare those two prospects pretty heavily, largely due to the footwork, and he will miss some throws and occasionally gets tunnel vision on top of this, which kind of just, I think he doesn't always get a ton of zip on his throws, which again might be the go back to the footwork stuff. Another guy with a lot of air under his deep balls, which I don't love. But the other stuff, the positives that I have in my column, good athlete. He will throw the ball away, which is definitely a positive trait. Not a lot of college quarterbacks do that, so I like that. I like his throwing motion. His receivers dropped a lot, which kind of makes him look worse. But I thought that maybe you could argue there's something to him doing it, but I didn't think so. I thought it was just the receivers. And he can throw off balance. So he's a good athlete. Is tall, can't teach height. And there's stuff to like about him as well. The concerns are why I'd rather take like a good player over Ritter unless I really was desperate for a quarterback. But in the second round, we're talking about less sure things at other positions. Give me the guy who could change a franchise if every box ends up getting checked.
Yeah. So this is the guy I had at number 6.
Okay.
Listen, I think there's things to really like about Ritter. He's obviously a great athlete. He ran a really good 40 time. I think people really like that. He stood out at the combine, and I think that's why people are going to talk themselves into him in potentially the first round as that kind of athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And you know what? I think every year at Cincinnati, like I said, he has a lot of snaps under his belt. He has a lot of
Mhm.
tape to look at. If you looked at his freshman tape, you said, "No way, this guy's playing in the NFL." I think if you looked at his senior tape, obviously you're going to talk yourself into it. He developed a ton. Um, my worry with Ritter and why I have him at 6, this guy's not going to be able to throw the ball downfield. I think he's got a lot of mechanical issues. I think he's going to have to work out. Now, this isn't a knock because I still have him as a 3rd-round grade, and still I think he's going to has a chance to be good. But if I'm going to nitpick here and have him below Zappy and have him below Howell, like I said, I just don't think he's going to be able to throw around the ball downfield because his release is slow and his arm's not good enough to make up for it. I think you saw a
Mhm.
lot of. I think what was the stat I saw? Let's see if I can bring it up here quickly. Slow operation time led to 26 career padded passes per PFF. I think he's going to have a tough time, especially throwing over the middle with that arm, with that release. I think it's really going to struggle. I think it's something that he can work on, but at the same time, like, I don't know how much better it's going to get, and I just don't know if he has the arm to make up for it.
I think that's a very good point. I think that everything you're saying absolutely makes some sense. Even John says, "I agree with Kyle." So you got John on your side, Kyle. I think that's good stuff. And one thing I did notice as well, I didn't put it in my notes, but for someone who's 6'4", a lot of tip passes, and there's
Yeah.
probably something to like that slump motion because that was a very real thing. One other thing I noticed with Ritter is I kind of felt like the offense didn't let him show off his talents as much as I maybe would have liked, which maybe there's a reason for that because he's not that talented, or maybe he is more talented in the offense, sort of like the just Justin Herbert thing where Herbert was much more talented, but the offense didn't show it off. So I get your concerns. I do. I guess the one thing I'll say is when you have a guy who is, has those, just the frame, I'm willing to take a flyer on him in the 2nd round if you're a quarterback need a team.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Sam Howell as that, or who was it? Zappy as that potential Dak Prescott kind of guy. I think
Hmm.
this is the kind of that guy to me where it's like, okay, he's got great intangibles. I think mechanically he needs some work. He put up big numbers in college. I think there's a lot of similarities there to Prescott potentially, but I just think Prescott has a way better arm than him, and I just think that if you're getting a guy like Ritter to potentially be your starter, you're constructing an offense that's basically 15 yards and in. And I just don't love that today in modern NFL. I don't think that's something that you want to do. I don't know if he's ever going to develop that vertical style of offense. And I just don't know if I can talk myself into it that way.
Interesting. Yeah. See, I didn't notice it as badly as you did. So maybe that's part of why we have a bit of a difference. I wouldn't say I thought his arm was great or anything, but I didn't think it was. I didn't think it was a mess necessarily either. I sort of thought it was just kind of fine. So maybe I need to go back and watch it. And again, that's kind of the weird thing is when watching tape is it seems like every time like we all go through this process, spend a lot of time looking at it, and then 2 people will have 2 completely different opinions on something like that. So maybe that's another just reason why we disagree.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think it's terrible, but at the same time, like, if I'm rating the arms of the guys in this class, he's, if let's just look at, obviously Strong's going to be at the top. If you look at like the 6 guys we've talked about as his top 6, read them fifth, 5. He's 5th or 6th for me arm wise.
At least in the top 5, I would put him at 5. Because
Yeah,
maybe there's someone, some obscure prospect who has a candidate of an arm or something. But yeah, out of those 5 for sure.
yeah. So we'll see what happens with Ritter. I do think he's going to end up probably as like that potentially 3rd or 4th first round quarterback, or potentially top of the 2nd round. But
Hmm.
I do have some questions going forward.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's move on. So Kyle, I believe this means we have the same top 3, maybe not in order, but of Corral, Willis, and Pickett are those are our 3, correct?
Yes, those are the 3 I
Mhm.
have up there.
Yeah, and that was in no particular order. Number 3, because so these are the guys who I'm interested in drafting in the 1st round. Now, number 3, I have literally as so my grading scale. I do it a little bit differently than most people do, of like 1 through 8. I didn't mind 1 through 10, and 8 is a 1st round talent, and then 9 is like 1st overall pick average. And I wanted to be able to go up so that way, in theory, there's no top kind of stuff. For someone like Kenny Pickett, who is going to be my number 3. I had him right at that 8 grade of he's right at a 1st round talent, but kind of a fringe 1st round talent. Because there's stuff to like about Pickett. The concern I have, and I'm sure we're going to get into all of it, is talk about one of the biggest things to talk about is like it seemingly took him 7 years to finally break out.
Yeah, so I have Pickett at 3 too. It was so hard for me last year to like take Kenny Pickett seriously because I don't know why it always seems to be on TV. And I just watched this guy forever and I was like, okay, I know who Kenny Pickett is at this point. And then all of a sudden he just explodes on the scene this past season and
Mm-hmm.
is ready to go. To me, you know, I have him at mid second round to potentially upper second round. I think someone's going to talk themselves into him as the safest pick of the draft, right?
Yeah.
Like this is
Mm-hmm.
the safest quarterback that, like, okay, I know what he can do well. I'm just worried that there's a lot of old quarterbacks in this draft too. I'm worried that this is like a Brandon Whedon syndrome where this guy's way older than everybody else he played, and that's why he's so much better.
Right. Yeah, he's again, he was 23, so like definitely on the older side. At least it's not like he's he wasn't 27, so Cleveland Browns fans can feel a little bit better. But yeah, definitely on the older side. And quite frankly, that's not the only issue with someone like Pickett. Like there's like I have my negatives. Let's read off these. Inconsistent arm strength. And I have okay pocket presence, so I'm not sure why that's in the negatives column, but okay pocket presence, which I felt like I didn't think his pocket. I think some people said his pocket presence was horrible. I thought it was fine. I thought fine throwing motion, and he's definitely it's a little bit arm dependent, but not too bad. He holds on to the ball very long, especially versus the blitz. He occasionally, again, no one can pick up a blitz. That's literally on all these guys' negatives is that can't pick up a blitz. He has the occasional WTF play, but not too often. Tries to fit the ball through tight windows too often. And my final negative, his little baby toddler hands.
Yeah, obviously the hands thing is interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of teams. I mean, there's got to be teams that take him off the list that are basically northern teams, right? I mean, I don't think it's as big of a deal as sometimes, but I do think it matters a little bit. And yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think he's terrible in the pocket like some people say, but he definitely has a little bit of happy feet, I think sometimes. I think he's ready to bail. I think there's times where he looks at a play and is ready to bail before it even starts. So
Yeah.
I think that I definitely think that plays into it. But that being said, he's a good runner. And
Right.
like he's not Malik Willis, obviously athleticism, but I think he runs really well. I think he's a smart runner. And I think that plays into it. Obviously the fake slide thing was, funny. But yeah, I mean,
I'll say this. I like the fake slide from his perspective. They had to ban it. It had to be against the rules, but I liked, doing it.
Yeah. So I think his arm's good enough, but I guess so. Once again, I'll bring this. There's two comparisons that I keep hearing about, and I want to nip two of these in the bud real quick. And I think this is the thing. So the first is obviously Mac Jones with the high floor, low ceiling thing. I think Mac Jones had a higher floor and a higher ceiling. I think that like Pickett does a lot of the same stuff that Mac Jones can do, but once again, Mac Jones is better in the pocket, and I think Kenny Pickett has a good enough arm, but I don't think he's as accurate, and I don't think he has as good of touch. I think there's just some of those things that I have concerns about. I think it's a good enough arm, though, and it should be okay that someone's going to talk themselves into it. But I think those are the concerns I have with Pickett. And then the other one, as John says here, Burrow was old too. I think there's a couple differences here. Pickett was in the same offense for all of these seasons at Pitt. He basically ran the same thing over and over again. Burrow was this big-time prospect, transferred from Ohio State, and then basically ran an archaic offense at LSU until his last season. They opened things up, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, Burrow's amazing. It's like, no, they just opened up the offense finally and let him do what he does really well. Pickett ran a lot of the same stuff, it felt like, for a lot of years. He just kind of mastered it by his last season, and so those are my concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I get some of the Mac Jones comparisons just because they're certainly stylistically different players, or excuse me, stylistically the same player. And I think that like Kenny Pickett's upside is probably a Mac Jones type because, there are things I like about him. I do think he's accurate. I do think that he runs an offense well and tends to be pretty smart with his decision making. Now, he's had a lot of years to practice that, right? So that obviously helps. But still, that's, it's better than if he couldn't do that, right? It's still a positive. His deep balls definitely I have I thought, his arm strength isn't great. Like it just isn't. Like doesn't have a cannon of an arm. He occasionally will throw with zip, but especially like his deep throws, he has a lot of air under them, which is that's a concern that I have with him. But again, there's stuff I like. Like you said, he's a good athlete. I think that he can move really well. He might be the second best runner of the football, like in terms of that'll translate to the NFL in this draft class behind Willis. Like I think that what he can do is really good, and he can throw on to run as well, and looks to throw on to run as well. So there's things to like about him, which is why I still have him as a fringe first rounder. But like, the idea of Carolina drafting him at like sixth overall, I think that's just like insanity. I don't think that I don't think he's that good of a prospect.
Yeah, I don't either, but I think, like I said, this is another one that I think some people are going to talk themselves into.
Sure.
Just because there are intangibles to like, and there are things going forward that you think you can develop. I do have some questions, but I also see the positive sides to Kenny Pickett. And you know what? I think that, could Pickett have an Andy Dalton type career? I absolutely think so.
Mhm.
I still have some questions about how prolific of an offense can you have with Pickett as your quarterback?
Yeah, and I also think about like, okay, so if you're one of these teams that's maybe has like some talent around them, and it feels like you can be competitive, but you just don't have the quarterback. So I think this year it really is only Pittsburgh, which is why I keep making that comparison. But or that giving Pittsburgh every quarterback. But like, I guess that's the scenario is if you're Pittsburgh, you draft Kenny Pickett, and hopefully you get 4 years of him being like, the threshold I typically say you have to get to on a rookie deal is like over 2.3 wins. That's what you want, is a 2.3 WAR quarterback for someone who's getting paid nothing. The more you get paid, the more you have to win. So for the cheap guys, you can get, if you can be a 2.5 win quarterback, which is around 15th best with a rookie deal, that's what can put you in championship contention. And I think that's the logic behind going after a Pickett, is hopefully you can get that, as in hopefully he can, that high floor, which I do think he might be better suited day one than the two guys I have ahead of him. But I also think he's not a can't miss prospect. He's not someone who can't be a mess in the NFL either.
Yeah. I actually don't hate the fit for Carolina. Like,
Mm-hmm.
especially with like I think DJ Moore's a little overrated, but he's a solid number one receiver.
Sure.
I like, obviously, if he has a healthy Christian McCaffrey, that's going to do loads for his, development too, and early on in his career. Obviously I don't think they should take him sixth, but like the problem is that quarterbacks are taken at a premium in the draft. For like, I don't think Carolina's in a situation where they can trade back in the first round and still draft him unless they're trading back to like 10 or 12, right? Like, I think it's a tough situation to gauge where you can take him. But like, as far as the fit, I don't think that's a terrible fit. As far as like, I think he could succeed in that offense. Like we saw 2 years ago what Bridgewater did in Carolina. I think he can go in and have similar results with a Kenny Pickett and potentially develop into something more. I just don't know what the ceiling is for that team.
Yeah, and listen, like obviously these teams are, most of them are very good at what they do, and most of them are smart with this stuff. Quarterback's a hard position to evaluate. It has the lowest hit rate out of any position. So there's definitely, and it's so important that taking chances on these guys. Like if Carolina picks Pickett at 6, not what I would do, but I'd say, all right, well, we'll see how it works out. Because if you were right, then even if I'm 90% right about Kenny Pickett, if there's 90% chance that what I said is absolutely true, well, maybe that 10% chance is worth it, because that would give you a really good quarterback, and that matters so much at the NFL level.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's basically been a 50% hit rate at first round picks. So, some of these guys are going to be good, some of these guys aren't. So it could be him.
Yeah, I think it might even be lowered. I've heard as low as like 1 out of 3 ends up being good in the first round. It's a tough one.
Yep.
Hmm.
I agree. But yeah, so I have him as a mid-second rounder, but I do think he's going to get taken in the first round. I think all three of these guys are going to get taken in the first round.
Yeah, I probably agree, and I have him a little bit higher than you. Let me ask you, or I guess I can't ask you because you don't know who. Well, yeah, so I'll just give my number 2. Kyle, I have both of these guys as mid first rounders, or maybe even a little bit higher. This is now. I think I like these guys. I legitimately like these two players as prospects. I don't know if I love them. I'm not sure if I'd put them as like Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence. I'm not even sure if I'd quite put them at. I think they're in the same tier I put like Mac Jones last year, which was like a good quarterback. I see some significant upside. And to me, while Pickett is getting comparisons to Mac Jones, I think the better comparison is my number 2 pick, Matt Corral. I think Matt Corral and Mac Jones, I see some comparison. Now, they're not the same player, but there's a lot of stuff to like with Corral, and there's some negatives, which we'll get to. Let's start with the positives first, though. He ran the offense very well. at Ole Miss. That's something that he did a very good job of doing. Again, some people will say it was an easy offense and the offense made him look better, but still, I want a guy who can run an offense well. He can run an offense well. We've seen him do it. And while many might say it's not it's not an offense NFL teams run, Miami did it. So like it's an offense one team does. So like there's at least some precedent there and there's some things to like. I think as a high IQ player, I thought he had easily the best pocket presence in this draft class. I think he, gets rid of the ball quickly if he can. He will lead his receivers and he throws to the open spot in the zone as opposed to the receiver, which is a trait a lot of young guys don't quite get down. And he's a little bit older. He's 23, so that's part of why maybe he has some of this better stuff. But he's also a really good athlete, can throw the ball a long way and can move as well and throws with good zips. So I have some negatives as well. But first, let me hand the mic over to you. What do you think about Corral?
So I have him as my number 2 as well. I have him top of the second round. But if it was just players I liked, this guy's going in my top 10 because I love Matt Corral as a football player. I just think he's fun. He's exciting. I think he throws the ball well. I think weirdly, the worst part about his game is his short throwing because it's like he almost seems like sometimes he tries to throw it like a dart and aim it. And I just think he looks weird doing it sometimes. But when he's just, playing football, I think Matt Corral's a very good quarterback. There's a few concerns I have. And obviously the big thing that's been a concern with him, and I think it is a concern, is that he's a little too small and his arms good, but not great. And I think the other concern I have for him is that he thinks he's Lamar Jackson. Like he runs
Yeah.
like he's like the best athlete on a football field and he takes ridiculous hits. And like, there's going to be times where there's going to be a lot of seasons, I think, where he's playing like 12 games just because he's a little smaller than what you want in a quarterback. And he takes big hits because he thinks he's the best athlete on the football field, which he's just not. And I think those are the concerns you have. But I just love his demeanor as a quarterback.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that I agree with most of that. I didn't fully see the he thinks he's Lamar Jackson stuff, but again, maybe I'll go back and watch more and see that. So that's fascinating. But I did see again, the misses the occasional throw, and you're right. It's like the easiest throws that will be the ones that he misses. It's a very bizarre thing. I think that he. And I do have in my notes he occasionally panics under pressure, but I didn't think it was too often. And I also have in my notes a good, not great arm. He isn't someone who is this, again, he's not Zach Wilson, right? He's not Patrick Mahomes with this arm talent stuff, but I still thought it was good. And then another thing I noticed, like when a defender when a defender breaks the rules of a defense. So for example, like it's cover 3, but then a corner like changes something else because they read the play. It seems that Corral really didn't notice that stuff. It seemed that Corral really wasn't great at picking that up. So that's something I noticed. And he also underthrows a decent amount of deep balls, which is weird because he can throw it a long way. It seems like it's an accuracy thing more than anything, but that's something I noticed as well. So that's kind of the round out the prospects. But like I like him, and I think that he has definite. Again, if the goal is to either find an elite quarterback or find someone who can quickly be a top 15 quarterback and get him for 4 years and then don't pay him, Corral fits in that second category for me pretty well. If I think he could be someone who I could easily see being like a good quarterback and you could win a Super Bowl with Corral on a rookie deal if you load up the rest of the team. That's how I feel about him.
Yeah, I think he's going to be largely scheme dependent. I think that if you're willing to draft him and design an offense to fit, like to scheme him, I think he's gonna be all right, and I think he could be a good starter for a number of years. If you're gonna try and like put him into a just pure pocket kind of style offense, strictly pro style offense, I think he's gonna struggle, and I think he's gonna kind of not last in the league in that regard. But like, I guess if you're looking at teams and fit wise, like I could see him in sort of a Seattle situation where you're running the ball a bunch. He can kind of do some of the Russell Wilson stuff where he runs around and tries to make some plays off schedule and that sort of thing. And he's got good receivers obviously there to help him with DK Metcalf. I think that there's things I really like about him in that regard. And I think he could fit that team pretty well. But I do think that there's going to be a bunch of teams that he doesn't fit with.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I guess my thing is like, I want to see him do other stuff, because just because I haven't seen him doesn't necessarily make me believe just immediately like he can't do that other stuff. Because I think some of this stuff, again, like I would like to see him do kind of more like open up the offense a little bit and see that. But of course, if you're a coach in college, your goal isn't to make Matt Corral look like a good NFL player. Your goal is to win games, and you shouldn't be doing that. So it's like that's kind of why there's a risk factor. And again, why typically if there's a quarterback I like, I say, hey, draft him as soon as you could draft him. I don't think that's the case with Matt Corral. Like there's players I would rather have not. Kyle, you know how I feel about edge rushers. There's edge rushers I'd rather have in this draft class than Matt Corral. So that's again, positional value has to come into play. That's part of why I say I would draft him. I don't think it's ever too early to draft the quarterback because of just how important it is. But that's kind of how I feel. Also, I wanted to give these two comments that came in back to back because these I think really establish just the draft season in general. Well, first, my opinion says win a Super Bowl with Corral. Okay, you are high. Very next one, that's a toilet saying next Brady. So mixed reviews of Corral.
Yeah, that should be how it is for everybody. I think he's going to get taken in the first round just because, like I said, positional value says he's going to be taken. I had him at the top of my round 2 board. But yeah, I mean, I do think that there's things you can really talk yourself into with them. And I think one of the ultimate things too when it comes to quarterbacks that I think people get overvalue, but it's important. He's really fun to watch. He's just a fun football player to watch play. So I like him.
Yeah. All right. Ready to go to number 1?
Yeah. Let's do it. Obviously,
did we say is he? Did we give a? Where was Corral for you?
2. He was number 2.
And where would you draft him? I think you might have said this, but I forgot. I missed it.
I said top of the second. I see him going early first. I almost put him as a first round grade, but yeah, I have him at the top of my second round.
Gotcha. So all right, final one. Of course, we know where we're going. Malik Willis. Gambling on the upside, right? I mean, out of all these guys, doesn't it seem like Willis has the highest odds to be the Patrick Mahomes of this draft, right? Of the guy who no one really loved, and then he is just a superstar.
Yeah. I mean, this is another guy who was big time prospect. Things didn't work out at Auburn. He didn't get the job. He went to Liberty. And it's a little bit weird. It's hard to evaluate some of these guys from smaller schools. And I think if you watched the Liberty game last year, it's very obvious that he's way better than everybody else on the field.
Yeah.
But at the same time, his problems at quarterback is that he is way better than everybody else on the field. So it's not like he has to develop quarterback qualities. I think the way I have evaluated Willis is he knows how to be the best football player. He doesn't know how to be the best quarterback yet. And I think he's going to I think if you're talking yourself into Willis, you have to talk yourself into the long game with him. That I think mechanically he's got a lot of stuff to work out, but man, that arm's electric, and man, that running. I mean, I think he'd be the second best runner in the NFL as a quarterback the second he steps into the league.
Interesting. You'd have him ahead of Kyler?
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm not sure if I'd have him ahead of Kyler. I'd probably put him at 3, though. I think that he's certainly up there. He's really good. I mean, Jake Thornton says Mahomes had a lot more throws on tape than Malik Willis. I agree. He's not as good of a prospect as even Mahomes, who wasn't considered a superstar prospect. He's so easy to fall in love with, right? He's so easy to talk yourself into. I mean, he's again, I would highly recommend if you have not really studied any of these guys' tape, watch the highlights. His highlights are incredible. They're a blast to watch. He's a great athlete with a big arm, can throw far with a quick release. I saw sometimes it seemed like he would take a little bit longer with his release, but he can throw with a quick release, so it's fine. And also really good accuracy. And again, like we're talking about, just incredible runner. He's only 6'1", but he's built he's built well, and he takes hits well on top of that, and is 22 years old. And I like his improv when play breaks down. I think he does a decent job. I wish he did it more, and I kind of wish he would throw the ball a little bit more too. But once he breaks it down, when stuff isn't going as planned, he can make something happen. And again, part of that is obviously just him being such a good runner. So those are the positives of Malik Willis. And it's so easy to say, this guy's going to be a superstar. And it's very possible that someone's going to say Malik Willis is going to be a superstar. And then, there's a very good chance this take ages very well, right, Kyle? If in 3 years from now he blows up, then this take will age very well. But there are legitimate concerns about Malik Willis, and he totally is a bust candidate in this draft. I had it as, not the best pocket presence. Hey, he's someone who can't pick up blitzes. Look at that as a negative. He will occasionally miss some throws. For the most part, he's accurate, but he will just have the occasional miss. And I also noticed he didn't really throw over the middle too much. We saw when he did, but like the offense kind of just didn't have him do that. Some of these reads he missed, Kyle, were just infuriating to watch. I mean, you'd see someone wide open, 30 yards away from the next closest guy. He's looking right at him and then like throws a check down. Like it's just the weirdest thing with him. Definitely too cautious with the football. He's accurate. I wish he threw the ball more, and he holds on to the ball for too long. Some of that ends up being good stuff. Some of that not so much. So there's stuff to like about Willis for sure. Absolutely. But there's also some negatives, and you certainly have to hope that you can coach those negatives out of him, because that's the one other thing to point out here is that the nice thing about all those negatives, none of them are physical. So like they're all things that you can talk yourself into. Well, we can get those out of him. Although again, it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah. So how much like pre-draft reading do you do? Or is it all kind of just tape based for you?
I try to when I first watch tape. And again, it varies position to position. For quarterbacks, I watch my tape and then I look at, I make my rankings. I try to look at as little as possible. You're going to see some just by looking at the list, of the quarterbacks you have to watch. Like they're going to be in order. So typically, I'm going to see it to some degree. But I watch tape, and then I'll do some reading, do some listening, and occasionally someone will make a good point. I'm like, yeah, that's probably a good point, and move someone down or up a little bit. Like I think at one point I had Howell as my number 6 guy, but then kind of more I thought about it, was like, yeah, I'll move him up more. But that's my process with quarterbacks.
Yeah. So everyone's kind of coined this comparison with him, and I think it fits. And I think it's kind of just spread around the entire internet now, so everyone's kind of taking it.
Mm-hmm.
Is he basically? Do you view him as Jalen Hurts with a way better arm?
That's interesting, kind of. I mean, I guess I get the comparison. I don't think Hurts has the mistake. I think Hurts is, for one thing, Hurts is great against the blitz. Like that's something he really excelled at the NFL level. So I think that there's some other issue. So I think Hurts is better at certain aspects than Willis. But I do see the comparison a little bit, and I think that part of what can make Willis good is kind of part of what made Hurts good, which is these good athletes can kind of have higher floors because you can sort of scheme up some running plays and just make things easier on the quarterbacks, open up those windows by using their running ability as they kind of start to get into the NFL level. That's why Lamar Jackson succeeded at an early level. So I could see this being a similar scenario with Willis.
Yeah. And, the thing is like, so I guess, we've talked about positional value. Obviously, he's going to move some of these quarterbacks up. We both had him with the first round grade. If I said, so Carolina's at 6, and I think if teams like a specific quarterback, they're going to have to move above them. So if I said 6th pick or higher for Malik Willis or lower, or 6th pick, are you taking the over or under for that?
As in what I think will happen, or what I would do?
What you think will happen?
And that's a good question. I think my gut says, I guess I'll say over. I think my gut says someone makes a move and goes out and gets Willis. And like, I kind of think they should, right? Here's my logic behind it is, let's say Detroit, because Detroit's a team that he's been kind of rumored to. If you're the Detroit Lions and you draft him with the number 2 overall pick, and then you draft, another like decent player with the number 32 overall pick, or you do the other way where you draft like Kayvon Thibodeau, which seems like a lot of mocks are having go there, I think is a good prospect, and then you draft like a Malik Willis number, or draft whatever quarterback you like, number 32. It's like, what would you rather have, the better prospects or like a much better defensive lineman? I'd rather have the better quarterback prospect. Like, I think it's like, if you feel like he can hit and you like him as a player, just draft him, because if he misses, then like you're screwed anyways. And if he hits, then you're in great shape anyways. So like, just draft the quarterback.
Yep. I think I agree with that. So I wouldn't hate a team taking him in the top 5 or moving up into the top 5 to take him. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, though. I think he needs, there's just the problem is that I think everyone's going to look at him and say he's not ready to play right now. This is definitely a guy who needs time to develop and needs time to learn. And I think that there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to have to try and buy into that.
Yeah, I also have to say this too about Willis. I don't think the guy's an idiot. Like, I think the guy's like no. there were some things. I know you're not saying that, but like, I definitely heard some people talk about that. And quite frankly, when it's a black quarterback, you kind of like your radar goes up a little bit with that. Why are people saying, like, I think that there was the like a tweet saying like that the scouts were surprised at how smart Willis was, and it's like on tape, like I saw him like make some good reads at times. He made some mistakes. He did. He was too cautious with the football. He's also young. Like I don't think that I think that that's gotten a bit overblown. It exists. It's on tape, but I think that kind of in between the ear stuff has gotten the concerns there have been a bit overblown, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of it too is just a lack of reps. I think he needs more reps, and I think he needs to kind of see the game a little bit more because it's very clear to me when I watch him that he didn't get a ton of time playing.
Yeah, and he was in a really complex offense too. I mean, they had a different play caller for third down than they did for first and second. So like, this is a difficult, situation for him to play in, and he thrived in it. But it's also fair to say it's just it's a different sport being quarterback at college level and being quarterback at the NFL level. It looks similar, but it's a different sport.
Yep, completely agree. So, but yeah, I mean, I still have number one. I think that he's definitely if we're looking at this 10 years from now and who's the star of this draft, it's definitely him that you're looking at. But I do think there are still some concerns with. I mean, and it's not a shock because we've talked about this quarterback class as a lower end, but yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's concerns with all of these guys.
Yeah, listen, someone in the chat saying sleeping on Howell. I think he will be the best quarterback when we look back on this draft. That's totally possible. I think the reality is I don't really feel confident about any of these guys, but I don't hate any of these guys either. And quite frankly, that's probably the mindset you should have when you evaluate quarterbacks. Is like, hey, this is who I like. This is who I don't like. We'll see what happens because, like, you put them into tiers, I think. But at the end of the day, who knows what's going to happen with so many of these guys? It's even the people getting paid tens of millions of dollars to do this stuff don't hit on it every time.
Yep, completely agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have an honorable mentions category. I'm not sure if we really had too much to add. Like I have a Cole Kelly and Brock Purdy, but I'm not really. We don't need to do a segment on them. I don't really care that much about it. I'm not sure if you have any honorable mentions you wanted to bring up.
Well, so I had 3 that weren't on your list. My 8, 9, and 10 were Akil Glass. I think he's an interesting prospect. I think he had some buzz before the season, and I still think he's a pretty good thrower of the football. He's up. He's not a great athlete, and I think that's something that's going to add to it. And then I had Cole Kelly actually 9th. I had Cole Kelly as a guy who, he's definitely getting drafted. I mean, the guy's a tank. And at the very least, someone's going to look at him and say, hey, this is going to be our quarterback from 5 yards and in because he's going to be able to run for a ton of touchdowns. 6'7", and actually runs pretty well. Sure. I think someone is definitely going to talk themselves into Cole Kelly with the 6 or 7 round pick because the guy is just a monster. And it's going to be interesting to see if someone actually talks themselves into it. And then the 10th one I can't talk myself out of the guy, Jack Cohn. He's not going to throw the ball downfield, but he rarely ever makes mistakes, and he's got great touch on the ball. And I just think that there's things that you're going to like.
Yeah. Cole Kelly's hilarious. Cole Kelly looks like you're watching like high school film of like one player is like way bigger than the other one. Like that's legitimately how it looks because he's 6'7", 260 pounds. He's an oversized linebacker, or oversized defensive end out there. I can't imagine that running style working too. I guess maybe it will just because of the pure size, but like, it seems like the way it works in college, it's like I have to imagine someone will be able to take him down at the NFL level, the strongest people on the planet. Yeah,
but the thing is he's bigger than a lot of defensive players too. So
yeah, that's right.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah, he can at least fall forward, perhaps. Yeah, he's interesting. All right, so that's our top 10 quarterbacks list, Kyle. Next week, so I was thinking let's do defense next week because I've already started defense. I'm almost done with that. So does that sound good?
Yeah. So are we doing just 10 or are we doing more because it's all defensive players?
So what we did last year, which I think we should do again this year, is we separated it by positions. So we did like top X for each position. So okay. I think I already have like a top 15 list for defensive linemen just because there's so many in this draft class. So we could do top 15 defensive linemen. We could do this on air, I guess. We could do want to just do like top 10 secondary players. That's what we did last year. And then so for then linebackers, I haven't gotten to linebackers yet. That's the one position I still haven't started. Do you think we should do top 5 or top 10 for that?
We could probably get away with 5.
Okay, we'll do.
There's a couple. I think there's a couple first rounders, and then outside of that, we could probably move on.
Okay, yeah. So top 5 linebackers, and then top 15 defensive linemen, top 10 secondary players. I don't think we missed any positions there. So that's what we'll do next week.
All right. Sounds good. How much do you love Aiden Hutchinson? A lot, right?
A lot. Yeah. Very good.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Not a huge fan of Trayvon Walker.
I don't know yet. I mean, he kind of popped up out of nowhere. It's going to be interesting. We'll talk about it next week, obviously. But when I watched, I was like, this guy's like Georgia's like fifth best defensive lineman, and all of a sudden now he's going to go top two.
I've seen him mocks having him at number 1.
I don't see it. I'm with you on that one.
Okay, yeah, I have a lot to say about a couple of Georgia players. We'll get into that. Should be a lot of fun stuff. Very much looking forward to that. So yeah, Kyle, any final thoughts before we head up?
Looking forward to next week's show. We're gearing up for draft season, and then it's getting for the off season. Just 155 more days until football season, baby.
Yes, remember to look it up this time. I see.
Yes, I'm on it.
Yeah. All right. A lot of good stuff here coming up. Everyone, again, thanks for everyone who is watching. If you like listening to podcasts, we put this podcast on anywhere you get your podcast. You can check that out. Or if you like watching podcasts and you listen to this, check out the YouTube channel, Jackson Kruger Sports. Also, Kyle, let them know where they can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at ByKyleRonan, and then make sure to follow the account page. That is at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK. And like you said, audio only podcast. If you're on Apple, go to Apple Podcasts, look us up, review, give us a good rating. We appreciate it.
Has anyone rated us? I haven't checked that at all.
We have some ratings.
Oh, how are we doing? Good? Are we doing bad? How is it?
We're 4.7 out of 5 stars.
Oh, I think that's good, right? It's not a good Uber score, but I feel like it's good on I feel like an Amazon purchase. I'd feel comfortable with 4.7.
Yeah, I think that's upper echelon of NFL podcasts.
Yeah, all right. I think that's what people say about us. We're the upper echelon of NFL podcasts. Those people are us, but at least people are saying it.
We're the Malik Willis of NFL podcasts. High upside.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Again, thank you to everybody. We do appreciate it. And until next time, see you later, alligator.
Peace.